Welcome to Season 2 of the Cultural Cultivators podcast by BALAY Creative and Cultivate Labs, where we delve into various aspects of film culture and speak with entrepreneurs, leaders, artists, and creators who are shaping and pushing the boundaries of their respective fields. Today, we continue to spotlight some of our favorite Cultivate Labs kapwa and community members. So join us as we cultivate a greater appreciation for the beauty and complexity of the Phil-Am experience. Follow us on all social media platforms at BALAY Creative or on Instagram at cultural.cultivators. Creative and cultivators with a K.
Ladies and gentlemen, my next guest tonight is a stand-up comedian here making his network television debut. Please welcome Kevin Camia.
I was definitely bullied growing up for many reasons, and one in particular is I played the clarinet. I played the clarinet 5 years. I was no good. I was third chair clarinet. If you don't know, that's the worst you can be at a musical instrument in grade school. You know what you do when you're third chair clarinet? You know what your role is in the school band? You hold down whole notes. That's all you can handle. You're just sitting there going, duh, duh, duh. I'm doing that while first chair, he's in the front row. And we're the same age. This kid's like ripping it like he's recording an album for Blue Note. He's just up there, he's like, the principal's smoking a cigarette. He's like, oh, that sweet, sweet sound, baby. I'm 9 rows back going, duh, duh. I didn't even have a clarinet. Oh, my school ran out of clarinets. They didn't even notice. I was just walking around the playground going, duh. I've been watching a lot of these racist videos online. Oh, I hate them. They star this racist guy, and he's always screaming at people. He's like, go back to your country. I hate that those people even exist. I just wish that they'd follow up that phrase every once in a while. Just go back to your country and go visit your grandma and take a lot of pictures. I'll feed the cats. Have a great time. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Today's guest is a writer, comedian, and actor originally from San Francisco Bay Area, now living in LA. Kevin Camia has been on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and has toured the country with Ali Wong. He is a member of the comedy group The Dress Up Gang, whose comedic series is recognized as a cult classic and can be found on all streaming platforms. He is also an original member of the Bindlesif Studios and is co-writer of Larry the Musical. Kevin is currently on the road with Shang Wang. In this conversation, Kevin gives practical advice on how to overcome setbacks in the entertainment industry and how indulging your curiosity can help you stay creative and motivated.
When the industry kind of runs you down, like you forget that I got to make stuff for myself. When I make it, they come to me if they want it. But I got to do the thing that I want to do first. Yeah, that gets forgotten a lot and people get real burnt out. But every once in a while, I'll come across something new, something that excites me. And I'm recharged again. It's just always just finding whatever that next thing is. Like Larry, I never thought of myself as like a historian or anything, but it kind of opened my eyes to being like, damn, you could be a historian. You don't have to be an educator. Just go out there and look for the shit. Go out there and find it. You can be an expert on something if you just did all the research. And so the labor history that I touched with on Larry kind of brought me to these other stories in our Filipino-American labor history. And when I was in Seattle doing stand-up, I was like, man, I'm going to make an appointment and go to University of Washington to their labor studies archives. So I went over there and I started looking up stuff made the appointment. You can look up the research, tell them what boxes of archives you want, and you can just sit there for a few hours and just go through some of these records.
Also in this conversation, Kevin speaks on his experiences as part of the groundbreaking Filipino-American comedy troupe Mood. He gives us a behind-the-scenes look of the writing process for Larry the Musical, and he walks us through the process of pitching a story in Hollywood. You can listen to Kevin's comedy albums, Color and Kindness, on Spotify, and follow him on Instagram at Kevin Camia, spelled Camia. So Kevin, thank you so much for being on our podcast. I have to say, just a little personal note, I've known you since I was a teenager.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And you were a family friend, but also you helped me jumpstart my comedy career.
You took a class back in the day.
I took a class at Bindle Studio. It had to have been like the late 2000, like 2008, 2007. Is when I started doing stand-up, and because of you, I gained the confidence to actually start going to open mics and telling jokes and having more of like self-agency to write my own stuff. So I just want to give you some credit and flowers and just some props, Kevin, because without you, quite honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today as an artist.
Ah, come on.
I'm being serious. It wasn't for that class that really started me on my writing journey.
Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't think I had the chops to write. And then I took your class and I was like, I really like this.
Oh, nice. Hey, that's awesome. Dang, make me feel hella old.
You literally do not look like you aged a day since 2007. So
I was looking at pictures back then. I'm like, man, I had like a neck that you could see. Like the face was like more chiseled, the whole thing. Better hair. Come on. I feel like when I look at people like my age, like from high school, and I look at their pictures, you do that too, right?
Yes.
You go like, damn, this feels like hella old. But then I'm like, man, maybe I do too.
No, you do not. You do not look like you changed at all, Kevin. You look great. It's like, what they say, Asian don't raisin.
That's true. But like I'm like balding and I got like gout and like the whole thing. Like my body's breaking down. Like I just feel it. But anyways, yeah.
So I just wanted to start off with this first question. Which ancestor or anyone that has transitioned on would you like to call into this conversation today to help ground us?
I'd have to say my homie Ray. Ray passed away some time ago. My age, probably the funniest dude, not a comedian, but the funniest dude and the most artistic, so well versed in like hip hop too, the hip hop culture, and kind of introduced me to a lot of things back in the day. And I think about him quite often. So let's bring him in here.
Nice. Speaking of origins, how did you start this comedy journey?
When I was in high school, like around the time when you were in high school, about that same age, I went to SF State to some kind of like Asian organization thing. I forgot what they called it back then, but it was like the first thing I ever been to. I was checking out the campus first. I was like, oh, maybe I won't go here. Then my older friend was like, oh, you got to check out this organization and see what's up with this Asian American community thing. I was like, all right, word. So I went. And like my mind was blown because, everybody was all fired up. They're all young. And then Allan Manalo did some like performance in the middle of the event. And I was just like, what? Like I'd never seen Filipino comedian before. And then he was talking about stuff that I was like, oh, shoot, I understand that. Like that was the first time I saw him. And then when I eventually went to state, I was able to work with him and like various like, PCN type stuff. And then I'd follow him around when he was doing comedy. And then at that time, it was like Rex, Kennedy Cabasares. Those three would do comedy and I would just follow them around kind of like a little kid and just see what they're doing. And got into it that way. And then eventually Allan took me over to start the Tongue in a Mood theater group. Well, there was like an original, which is like late 80s. And I think Kennedy was part of it, and Rex was part of it for a little bit. And another gentleman, Ron Muriera, he was in it, and Allan. So they had the name Tongue in a Mood. I think they just did it like a couple of shows or something like that. Then it just stopped. But then when I met Allan and another performer, Patty Cachapero, the three of us did some colleges as Tongue in a Mood. And then when we went to Bindlestiff, we got more people. So been working with him ever since. But a huge props to Allan. Like, if there was no Allan, I would not be doing this, for sure.
Would you say Tongue in a Mood was more of a sketch group? Or did y'all do like sketch and stand-up and improv and all those things?
Yeah, in the very beginning, it was sketch. Like, I remember Allan wrote a bunch of things called Lola Sayang. It's like some product. And like, it'd be like lengua lollipops and like, you know, lechon flavored ice cream. Like very sketch, very sketch. And so we were doing that. And that kind of felt like, okay, we'll do that, do some stand-up in between. But then Patty wasn't a stand-up. She had more of a performance, poetry type background. So she'd go bust that out. And then as we started bringing in other folks like Ramon and musicians and things like that, then it just got a little more experimental. And then definitely meeting Christine Els at Bindlestiff. It was her spot to begin with. She was teaching us things like clowning and walking on stilts and like mask making, all kinds of crazy shit. So we were like, oh man, let's try to do that, you know?
And that was like the beginnings of Bindlestiff Studio. So for those that don't know, Bindlestiff Studio is I think right now, still the only Filipino-American theater in the nation.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like the beginnings of it in the, late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. It's been a minute.
That's how I got started with Sue Bindlestiff.
Yeah. It's really cool. There's a lot of folks in the community make their way through there at some point. It's always welcoming, and it's always like, hey, if you want to learn this or you want to try this out, then just do it. And so it's a good place to start out. And then a lot of those folks branch out and do other things. And it's always like a newer generation, you know?
Exactly. So what I loved about, and kind of echoing what you're saying, being immersed in a Filipino-American theater performance experience and environment was so wild and unique to me in the late 90s, early 2000s, that as a young person, just exposed to what we saw Filipinos being stereotypical Filipinos, but then going to Bindlestiff and seeing that, oh, we can write our own material and we can be the lead characters of our stories. That was just like mind-blowing.
Yeah. Isn't that great? I love that. I remember one time, because you know when we do shows there, then everybody kind of hangs out afterwards.
Yep.
And like just kind of wilding out, like just doing whatever. I remember me and I think OG was playing drums, and then I think Gail was on violin. I was playing the bandurria, and maybe Christine Balance was playing her accordion, and we're just wilding out. And then that's how Bobby Bandurria came. Like, I was like, oh, damn. Like, hey, what if we just do this? And he was like this, we called him like the legendary Bobby Bandurria. And it was essentially just me playing an amplified bandurria through amplifiers and sometimes effects with like a full band behind me. I had like leather pants and like I'd wear an open barong, like just whatever, you know?
Sexy.
Yeah, super sexy. I was wearing like cowboy boots and I had a wig, the whole thing. And then so I was writing all these songs, and then, you know, luckily these guys were all good musicians. So we just started doing that. And we were doing that, you know, Bindlestiff, some community events here and there. Then we got invited to perform in the Philippines. It was like, all right. What it was is Joey Ayala, who's like the dude in playing folk instruments in a modern way, right? Like in the Philippines, he has all these albums. His whole family's renowned in that way. That fool came out here, was like commissioned to do something or whatever. I think he was making music for Pearl Bungan And then I think I got involved in that, me and OG, and then we were like, hey, we want to jam with you, you know? And he was
As your
super cool.
character.
Yeah, as the character.
Did he know you were playing a character?
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. And he was kind of down with it. And we did some shows with him out in the Bay. And then when we went to the Philippines, we linked up with him again, and he helped us get some shows.
So you did like a world tour as this character.
Yeah. It's funny.
What kind of music did Bobby play?
It's like all over the place. It's funny because Raim, the bass player, and Theo has an R&B background and also like can play jazz, and then Raim Picardo playing bass. He's also a flutist, and he plays jazz. But then everybody else, we don't. So we were playing like some kind of mixture of like kind of like folk and funk and a little bit of jazz, just all over the place. I would write lyrics. I'd write lyrics, and then most of the songs they would help arrange. But it's like I never felt like I could sing or anything. But it's just something about having that wig on. Is just I'll just play the persona.
You talked about Allan Manalo, huge community influence. But what are some of your other biggest influences in comedy and music, like growing up? The folks that you looked up to, folks that shaped your own experience as an artist?
Andy Kaufman did some wild stuff. Of course, he was in the show Taxi and played Laka, like some foreign person. But he would do these crazy things, and Alan actually got me even more into him, where he would do like these things where you go, is that real or is it not real? Like he did this thing where he was like wrestling women on TV, and like people are like, man, what an asshole that guy is. But it's a bit, but he commits to it. I'd say that had a big influence of questioning like stuff, if it's real or if it's not real, or transforming the performance into something else. I mean, it's just the way that I think, that's all. Earlier on and around that time, got into Buster Keaton, a lot of Buster Keaton stuff, silent movie star, and all his physical comedy was just like incredible, where he wouldn't have a stunt man and he would just do all these crazy stunts himself. But he'd also choreograph it all, design the whole thing. I often think about those two people, but straight up comedy-wise, I would say Martin Lawrence. And he's coming back too. He's starting to do stand-up again. You remember the Martin show? There was a time when like there was like In Living Color, and then I think a little later Martin came, and both of those were like, wow, that's incredible. And Martin was doing all these characters, and it was like, I still watch some of them on YouTube, like Dragonfly Jones. Dragonfly Jones is like this karate master that he created. But the running bit is that his student is asking for him to like pay him back on some money or something like that. And then so Dragonfly Jones is like, man, I don't owe you nothing. You're my student. And then there's only one way to settle it. So then they fight, and then there's like the student always beats up Dragonfly Jones. It's the same bit every single time, but it's so funny. But yeah, I would say all that. Martin Lawrence, Buster Keaton, Andy Kaufman.
Oh, wow. What a variety.
Yeah.
I love that, though. I love Martin Lawrence and In Living Color.
Oh, my God.
That was a golden time for BIPOC comedy.
That's what's up. Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of sketches and working with friends and long-awaited projects, I just want to say congratulations on both the premiere of Larry the Musical, which happened earlier this year, and also I just saw the announcement of the Dress Up Gang movie. That's exciting.
Yeah.
My question to you is, what has the experience been like working on these long-awaited projects with your friends who you've known for decades?
It's something else, yeah. This is the first time I thought about it when you just said it like that. I was like, damn. Yeah, I feel lucky. I feel super lucky. The Larry project, of course, Gail took the reins on that, and she headed that thing. She's the face of it. If she didn't have that idea with Brian, none of that would have happened, all that stuff. But that was a lot of fun. I found myself doing some things that I wasn't normally doing before, as far as like researching this person, and then even like traveling to Delano to talk to sons and daughters of these farm workers and looking through all of Don. Don had so much research, Don Mabalo, and reading through all that and trying to figure out who is this character. Because the one thing that we didn't have is kind of like more of who he was. As far as looking through the documents and all that stuff, it's like, okay, here's some things that happened and here's kind of timeline of history, events. Okay, you got that. And then when you start talking to people, people are like, oh, he was the sweetest man. The sweetest man. Like, he's always down to talk to you about, you know, the old times. And then you talk to other people, it's like, yeah, this fool had a mouth on him. And then there was some times in it that when we would show the script or people would read through it, they'd go, oh, you know, he wouldn't have said that, you know, like he wouldn't have cussed, you know. So then you have to make a decision of like, oh, okay, we're just trying to make a story. And then we had to take some liberties and like create this person how we see could tell the best story. So that was good. And that was a lot of fun working with Gal. And then this movie thing with the Dress Up Gang, these are all guys that come from the same SF comedy scene. They live out here in LA now and been making sketches and short videos with them for a while and had a TV show for a while, but it just didn't last. We had like, I think 12 episodes of a season and then it just stopped. Or they didn't want it. Nobody wanted it after that. It didn't just stop. We could have kept going. But then it developed this kind of like cult following of people like, oh, okay, that's cool, because we released some stuff online. And then just recently they got an offer to make a movie, and I was fortunate to be in it. So there's still like editing it and stuff like that, and we have to probably reshoot some stuff, but that's fun too, because they're a unique form of comedy. And it's the same things that I learned at Bindlestiff and same things I learned from Allan of comedy and stuff. Like, don't take the easy route, you know, like have a unique perspective. And then these guys definitely have that. They have their own style.
I think that's what I appreciate about being in the San Francisco comedy scene and starting my comedy journey here, but that it's so unique. And everyone has their own, like, way of expressing their comedy.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
And we respect each other. Like, we don't expect all of us to be like those, you know, really loudmouth, super, like, on the audience, you know, foul-mouth comic. But also, like, you could be weird. You could be strange. You could be out of the box. And that's what I loved about your comedy style, too, and what you taught us when I was taking your classes is, like, be yourself. Because I think the first, like, year or two, I was trying to be, like, what I saw on TV.
Right. Yeah.
And I think at one point, someone was like, who is that?
Yeah.
Why are you not being yourself?
Right. It's a funny thing because that takes a while for people to learn, too. Even when I started, I was just like, man, I got a reaction from the dirty jokes that I would do, or just kind of blue material. And I was like, I got a reaction. It was quick. It was easy. And I was like, okay. And a lot of my jokes back then were kind of like that. And like where I would never do that now. Not in the same way, at least. But yeah, it takes a while. And then the thing about San Francisco too, like maybe social media has changed things too, but the good thing about the San Francisco scene is there's no industry. Back in the day, you know, when we started and when you started, there's no industry lurking around trying to find out who's going to be the next whatever. So if there's no industry influence, you can do whatever you want to do. And I think that's why it became so creative. Maybe it's different now because you can see who's getting a lot of hits online, you know, and it could be that in-your-face comedy. And I see people gravitating towards that too. But still, San Francisco will always have that in their comedy style, I think.
Yeah, and I appreciate that about having this environment to kind of do what you want and focus on the things you want to talk about versus like having to pander to an industry that's just going to chew you up and spit you out when they're done with you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. It's hard out here. It's crazy out here.
Well, that was another question. What was the inspiration to move down to LA? Because you're in LA now.
Yeah, I think I always wanted to move. I wanted to move earlier, but it just took some time. It's to do more acting, TV, and film stuff, and that was the main reason to move. And then I've had some things happen over this time that I've been here that have been really good, but it's such a grind. It's not even like you can have a good year and then the next year is a struggle. It's like you can have a good month and then the next month is a struggle. It's so up and down. And you really have to, everybody says, oh, you got to develop a thick skin. It's like, it's so true. It's like, there's so much rejection. There's so much rejection. It's not necessarily to go, hey, we don't want you, or, yeah, we don't like that. It's like you work so hard on something, submit it to one of these like gatekeepers or whatever, and then hear nothing. So then you get no notes, you get no nothing. There's no feedback. It's just like, okay, I guess I got rejected because I didn't hear back. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of auditioning. You audition, and then you get the call back, and you get a little excited, do the call back, and then nothing. Or you get put on, for commercial work, you get put on a veil. That means you made it past the callback. They liked you. But if it doesn't work out with this other person, then you're the next in line. So I've had like quite a few of those in the commercial world. And like, it's like, just don't even tell me, Don't tell me. Don't even tell me I'm on a veil. Just tell me if I got it or not, like it's crazy. Because you start getting excited and you're like, okay, maybe this is the thing that turns it all around.
Yeah, that's how I felt in New York. It was constantly like that again, like you said, not every year, like every week.
Yeah, every week. Exactly. I seriously thought like when the show got picked up, and this was like 2017 or something like that, I was like, damn, I'm about to sell out comedy shows. Like I was just kind of in my head, because I've been daydreaming about it forever since I was a kid. So I was like, man, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Nah, dude.
Well, it did happen and then it didn't happen. But that's how finicky the industry is.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And like all the mergers that happen, like you could be under one company and then all of a sudden it merges with the WB or Discovery Channel. And then it's like, oh, we're actually going to cancel all of Insecure and we're going to cancel all the BIPOC shows.
Yep. That's exactly. And that you don't have any control over that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why social media is good in that way, because you can create your own thing, get your own following, say F all that. And really, the Dress Up Gang, they were making videos, and it wasn't like it was viral, like things went viral. It was just a finished product that somebody saw and went like, okay, that could be something else. Let's talk to these guys. So I always encourage people too, like, hey, from anywhere you are, you don't have to be in LA, just make stuff, write it, make it. That's what you do, right? Just write it, make it. And like, it could go in some festivals, maybe something happens. But other than that, besides all that, you're just working that muscle. And that's
exactly.
That's the best thing.
You're working that muscle and you're creating for you. Yeah.
For you. No better feeling than that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because I realized like my 10 years in New York, I was like creating all these things, sort of pandering to the industry and hoping it'll hit.
Yeah.
And then when it never hit, it was like, I need to start creating for me. Like, what is it that gets me excited? What is it that makes me feel joy? What is it that like makes me laugh at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's it.
And it's like, that's how you find your thing. That's how you find your joy. That's how you pinpoint. Because when you start to create for yourself, it's like a whole other thing. It's another level. And I think, too, that's how this podcast started, was like, this is an idea that I had. And now we have like followers and listeners from all over the world.
Wild. Isn't that wild? That's awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
When the industry kind of runs you down, like you forget that I got to make stuff for myself. when I make it, they come to me if they want it. But I got to do the thing that I want to do first. Yeah, that gets forgotten a lot and people get real burnt out. But every once in a while, I'll come across something new, something that excites me. And like, I'm like recharged again. It's just always just finding whatever that next thing is.
Like Larry the Musical.
Like Larry. But then even after Larry, like I never thought of myself as like a historian or anything, but it kind of opened my eyes to being like, damn, you could be a historian. You don't have to be an educator. Just go out there and look for the shit.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
Go out there and find it. You can be an expert on something if you just did all the research. And so the labor history that I touched with on Larry kind of brought me to these other stories in our Filipino-American labor history. And when I was in Seattle doing stand-up, I was like, man, I'm going to make an appointment and go to University of Washington to their labor studies archives. So I went over there and I started looking up stuff, made the appointment. They have their own community of stories up there. You know, it's like California. We kind of got like, there's farm worker history here. And then, you know, a lot of them worked the canneries. They all worked up and down. But that cannery history for Filipinos back then is something else. It's really wild. Like, these fools went through it and continue to go through it. Anyways, so I just got all interested in that. I was like, damn, I'm about to read on this shit. You can look up the research, tell them what boxes of archives you want, and you can just sit there for a few hours and just go through some of these records. Like, there's a lot of labor records, and a lot of people donated their stuff to the archives. Okay, real quick. So there's a guy, Trinidad Rojo, who I happened to research in college, but I didn't even know what was up. I was like, oh man, I got a free chance to go up to Seattle. You know, I'm like 20, 21, and interview this guy, Trinidad Rojo. At the time, he was like 90 something. And then I had the opportunity to also interview one of the girlfriends of Carlos Busa. And she was like, you know, in her 90s. So I was like, I'm not even thinking nothing, you know, because I'm dumb. I'm 20, you know. I was just like, oh, I am to have fun. So then I'm like talking to them, videoing them, not even thinking of like, wow, how great is that? So then I go to the archives and I look both of them up just to see. And not that my research was in there, but there were just like boxes and boxes and boxes of research. So I was like, damn, like straight talk to that fool. But, you know, I'm like 20. So that's the thing that's exciting me now. It's like, man, I want to learn about this. I want to learn about the KDP, the Democratic Filipino organizations that were anti-Marcos back in the day. Just nerd out on it a little bit when I'm not making jokes about random stuff.
No, but I think that's what's beautiful about you being you, but also having that comedy background, is that you are now giving folks access to stories that they normally wouldn't even think about or hear about.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's so many people that went to go see Larry the Musical that had no idea who Larry Leong even was.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hopefully what happens is you watch it and there's like young people there and they like the songs, they're rocking out, they're having a good time. But hopefully what it does is it opens up like, okay, well, let me learn more about this dude, or let me learn more about that time, or what other stories are out there. Because we did take some liberties in it. Like, for example, before the first half ends, the Filipino Federation in Stockton was bombed. So they're like, let's take a picture in front of the burnt out building. So that's a real picture in history that it's so great. It's like this burnt out building. It's all these Filipinos and some Filipino families all dressed up, just smiling in front of it like, aha, bitch, you ain't getting me, you know, like we're staying here. So then in the story, then we made it more like Larry was kind of bringing people together. And we don't, sorry, spoiler alert, but we don't know if he was even there. But we know he was there around that time. And there was another family, the photographer who took that picture, I think might have been the person that gathered everybody. So for the purposes of our story, it helps move things along and gives like kind of something. But again, but if you're getting all your history from a musical, then like, come on, Doc. Like,
Based on true events.
yeah, based on true events. That's what it is. It's like if you got all your history about Hamilton, like from the musical, it's like, nah, it's gonna be all wrong.
Really, aren't these people Puerto Rican?
Yeah, exactly. Like, wait, I thought they were Puerto Rican.
No, 100%. It's a door that opens you.
Exactly.
But like, yeah, I think art has so much power to move folks through music. And the music in Larry is so touching. It's moving. I don't think there was a dry eye at the end. I'm not going to spoil what happens at the end, but there's definitely not a dry eye at the end of that musical. And it was so powerful to see one of our heroes on stage. And I think walking out of that theater that night, it fired me up, not only as a Filipino-American, but like a Filipino-American who's also writing a movie on her own uncle, who's part of the Third World Liberation Front and
hell yeah.
civil rights. And it was like you said, the industry sort of like fizzles dreams out, but Larry the musical reignited my passion for my project.
Oh, heck yeah. See, that's what's up. That is what's up. Only good things can come out of it when you're fired up about something and fired about a project. Only good things. Like, you never know. Like, you do a reading of it, people like it, and then it just goes from there. Or you meet somebody also from that time or something, that you can collaborate with and all kinds of things. Proud of you for that one.
Well, I have to say, it's a lot because of you and Gail and the folks that put this together. Like, I know that process must have been like a long time coming, but how long did you take to write the musical?
They were 5 or 6 years into it. I think I got called up in the last 4 years of it, but it did take some time. We had these 3 workshops, and then a lot of the songs were created really without a full story in mind. It was just like, let's just write these songs about whatever. And then we kind of worked backwards a little bit in fitting a story around some of it, which isn't like a typical way to go. You probably want a story first. But I think Gail and Brian kind of knew where to go. And then some of those additions happened later on, like within the last year. Even some of the songs was written a couple weeks before we opened. It was something else. Because if there's a story hole, we go, oh shit, better start singing in there. Someone better sing it. And then I think it's still going to continue to change into something else or whatever they decide to do with it going forward. Yeah, it could totally change. Just all good.
Are you going to be involved in that process moving forward with Larry and what they're going to be doing?
That I'm not too sure of, but I'm totally fine with it, with what it was this time around. And then I'll be a fan no matter what. So I'd like to see where it goes. It can only get better. So we'll see. I like jumping from project to project to project. It just being like, all right, I'm out. I got to do something else.
That's the beauty of writing, right?
Yeah.
Not producing.
Yeah, not producing. Yeah. Oh my God. There's no way. I can't even imagine.
So what's the next project in the horizon that you can talk about?
So I've collaborated with a friend of mine, Frankie Quinones, who's also from the Bay, started in the Bay. He does all these characters. The one breakout character is called Creeper, and he's a cholo that does exercise videos. I do whatever, man. No, but when we started making that, we were we didn't know. And then it kind of took off. And he still does a character. So there's people interested in doing things, not only with that character, but with Frankie, because he does a lot of different characters. And we are working on something to just get ready for the pitch. So you spend a whole bunch of time and maybe you got a 1-pager or 3-pages summary of what the thing is you want to do. Then you go around to these different productions companies and say, well, this is what it is, what it is, this is what it is. Give me some money. You know, you just keep doing that and doing that. So we're just getting ready for the pitch. We have somebody interested already, and without saying too much, I don't know how to say that. It sounds corny, but like,
Yeah, fingers crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Well, I love Frankie. He started around the same time I did, and like, it was like Frankie, me, Sammy Obeid, you know, all of us youngins in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. Yeah, we started around the same time. I love seeing his stuff. He was so good with character work.
Yeah.
He was such a great... But then he had a show, right? Was it on TBS or something?
Well, he's part of the Dress Up Gang, too. And then he had a show recently, This Fool.
Yes, it was This Fool.
It's on Hulu. And I think they got 2 seasons, and then they got discontinued for the 3rd one. But there's like quite a few different people that want to work with him in some kind of capacity. So fortunately, he like brings me along to like help figure out like a story, basically figure out a story to pitch. And then the thing is, I can help figure out the story for a movie, and then somebody else is going to write it. You know, which is like totally just how it goes. You got to be okay with that part, you know, not too precious with things. So if I have an idea, something, blah, blah, we go back and forth. Oh, that's great. Now the studio wants somebody with a name to write the thing. It's like, whatever.
Yep. I think that's the thing. Like when I was pitching my pilot out, it was like, oh, you're not a big name enough. Who's your big name? What's the big name? That can be so daunting.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's awful. It's awful. But I don't know. I'm hopeful that things kind of change.
Yeah.
Because you got to put it in the hands of the artist, really. And then the people that do that, proven to be very successful. You know, it's like Abbott Elementary. You know, that what came out of her mind. She pitched that. You know, she was a viral sensation for a minute there. So they go, okay, well, a lot of people are interested in you. They like you and all this stuff. And then what do you got? She did some other things before that, but like, you got to give it to the artist to let them figure it out. You know, because someone could come along. Yeah, we like the movie. We like your movie. It's great. It's about your uncle, like the whole thing. Like, yeah, but we're thinking we're going to have somebody else come in. You know, just punch it up, maybe adds a little more weight to the first act or whatever, anything like that. And then sometimes it could be like, okay, we're done with you. Or then you fight it. I'm like, no, you guys ain't getting this shit. Or let me collaborate with somebody, you know, or something, you know.
Has that happened to you?
I mean, in some ways, like writing some things and then like not getting credit for it. Yeah, it's kind of happened. But I don't try to get too precious with things just because it's like, well, let me just move on.
Yeah, to the next thing.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not your own brainchild, right?
Right. You know, if it's like character stuff for Frankie, it's like, yeah, it's cool. I mean, I don't need to be like all up in there.
What other advice would you give to aspiring comics writers or creatives who want to take this route?
I would just say you got to do the work. You just got to do the work first and foremost. If it's for comedy, that's like going up at mics, writing material, blah, blah, blah. But also like just being a student of it, I think gets lost sometimes. Like research the old school and then, you know, once you get in these little groups of comedians, we always talk about like people's bits and things like that. But somehow you got to be kind of like a student. I would say watch a lot of comedians that you do like. Even watch the comedians that are successful that you don't like. Just watch a lot of stuff and try not to just watch it on TV. Watch it live. And this could go for any kind of writing. But always like when you decide, whether it's a punchline or if it's like something that happens in a scene that turns the scene, whatever that first thing you wrote may not be the thing that is the best for that joke or for that story. Take that, put it on a piece of paper, and then write a bunch of other punchlines or situations or blah, blah, blah for the character until you have a whole list of stuff that you can go, okay, this one. Because sometimes when we think of the first one, it's kind of like, yeah, well, shit. A lot of people probably thought of that first one too. So it's less of a surprise, you know? Like for comedy, like it's not enjoyable if I go, yeah, I probably would have said that too, you know? As an audience member, it's like, yeah, I thought that. It's funnier when, oh, I didn't think that. Oh, that's funny. That's a funny way to put that. So it's probably the same with any kind of writing.
It's not just taking the lower hanging fruit.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And when you watch TV and you watch movies, I mean, you see that all the time. You see it all the time. Like, man, that's corny right there. Like, why'd you think that? Like, who was the writer? And then they're in a writer's room and there's a producer there and the actor's there reading it. And they're all like, oh, yeah, that's it. Like, fuck, no, it ain't it. You just put out some whack ass shit. I'm just kidding. I'm all mad. But seriously, you know, like every once in a while you watch a show and you go, damn, like Boots' show.
With the giant?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, take me on that ride, man. Like, what the fuck? You know, that's wild.
His stuff is always wild, though.
Yeah.
Like his movie.
Yeah. Weren't you in the movie?
People think I'm in that movie all the time. No, I was in Fruitvale Station.
That's right. Fruitvale.
Or Ryan Coogler, yeah.
Oh, damn, Fruitvale. That sounds some heavy shit.
Yeah, it was heavy. Actually, I was a doctor. Ryan Coogler was my name tag. There was like an Easter egg right there. And
yeah.
I was in every hospital scene. I was the person that took his heart monitor off after he passed away.
Damn.
But I am not typical Filipina. I do not know anything medical. So I actually took off those things the wrong way. I was peeling it off his skin. You're just supposed to click them off. And he was like flinching. He's supposed to be dead and he's like flinching.
Oh, no.
That's I was like, funny. You cast the wrong Filipina for this.
That's funny. So the aunties can clown you. They can be like, oh, look at that. Look at that.
She's doing all wrong. She's doing all wrong. She's not really a nurse.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. What are you currently geeking over?
It's the story of Jean and Silmy. Jean, Viernes, Silmy, Domingo. They were labor organizers that were gunned down in 1981. And so the story is just wild. And most people that take in some kind of history, they kind of know of it. They know of the story. When I was doing Asian American Studies, we didn't talk about it, probably because they just didn't know too much about it then. I don't really know. Anyways, but those stories are so intriguing and has to do with all of that, like the cannery workers, the union, the KDP, and then Marcos, and then the Philippines. So it's like, it's wild. It's just a real fun read.
Nice. And hopefully we'll all get to know and understand a little bit more of it because you'll write something about it.
Yeah. I'm writing a musical. I'm writing a musical where Bobby Bandura sings about it.
Yes. Let's do it. Bring you out of retirement. Dust off those leather pants, Kevin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, Kevin. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome.
In this recent conversation with Kevin, he shared his insights about navigating the ups and downs of Hollywood. Some of the key takeaways, I think, were persistence pays off. Yes, rejection is tough, but Kevin sees it as a learning opportunity. It's not a reflection of your talent or worth. Instead, use rejection to refine your craft and find new ways to express yourself. Embracing rejection as part of the journey and letting it motivate you to improve is literally the definition of growth mindset. Kevin's journey is a great reminder that persistence is key. He mentioned shows like Abbott Elementary and how she faced plenty of rejections, but she kept at it. And when the industry finally took notice, it was because she stayed true to her vision. So, keep doing what you love and don't be discouraged by setbacks. Eventually, hard work and dedication will pay off. I also appreciated his quote on adopting the mindset of a student. He talked about the importance of always being willing to learn, and I loved his advice on studying the greats in your field. Whether you're a comedian, a writer, a rapper, even if you don't necessarily like their work, it's always important to learn from those who came before you. By keeping an open mind and continuously learning, you expand your creative skills and you grow as an artist. That's something I've always taken to heart. And no matter where I am in my artist journey, I always take workshops, whether those are writing workshops, acting workshops, improv workshops. I'm always learning as an artist, and I think that pays off in the long run because you have this growth mindset. You always want to be in this space of learning because we continually grow and evolve as artists. And then you're just not stuck in a box. You break out of that box. You learn more, you add to your toolkit, and you grow. I think that's the epitome of a great artist, to evolve and grow with your art. What I also loved about this conversation with Kevin was his advice on creating art for yourself. Kevin stressed the importance of creating art that genuinely excites you, brings you passion, brings you joy. And he's right. Hollywood can be a tough place to crack. And of course, rejection is part of that game. But his advice to keep creating art for you is gold. Because when you create from a place of passion, it shows. Your authenticity shows, your enthusiasm shows, and it makes your work stand out. So focus on what makes you happy and let that drive your creativity. I think moving out of New York, that was the one thing that I focused on coming back to California. I hustled in New York for 10 years, doing the industry thing, going to auditions, writing pilots, pitching it at networks. And a lot of the feedback I got after all that hard work was, you're not a big enough name. And of course, my ego was devastated. But as I've learned doing this podcast, rejection is also often divine protection. And what I learned moving out of New York was maybe asking and begging for a seat at the table isn't the way to do it. Maybe we get to build our own table. And so moving back to California, I decided I'm going to help build that table. Hence this podcast. And so this podcast is what drives me to my joy. It's what helps me ground in my happy, and it's all rooted in legacy for my son. So this podcast, producing it, interviewing the guests, writing the questions, even these intro, outros, and lessons learned, it's all rooted in love. It all comes from my happy place. And as I like to say, it's not hard work if it's heart work, if it's rooted in your heart. And so I love this advice that Kevin talks about, doing your art for you. And his story, it's a great example of the power of persistence, of self-motivation, and continuous learning in a growth mindset. By creating art that excites you and staying true to your vision, you can overcome these challenges of the industry if you choose to entertain this industry. So keep learning, embrace every experience, and celebrate your progress. Because in time, the industry might come around. But I think the real reward is the joy of fulfillment of creating art that's uniquely yours, that helps our kapwa, that's rooted in community and pushes our culture forward. You can find more information on Kevin at kevincamia.live or on Instagram at Kevin Camia. Camia spelled C-A-M-I-A. Cultural Cultivators is hosted by me, Nicole Salver. You can follow me at Kindred Kapwa or follow us at cultural.cultivators on Instagram. Cultivators with a K. The podcast is co-produced by John Reyes, Kindred Kapwa, and BALAY Creative, and is a product of Cultivate Labs. Stay in touch at balaycreative.org.